Wait, so Jaimee, how many times have you ordered takeout in the last week?
What?
Oh, so I'm actually on a very, I'm on a budget.
Okay.
I'm trying to save money because I'm moving. So I only allow myself to do takeout twice a week. And usually it's on weekends. So Friday is Sushi Friday, no matter what.
Sushi Friday. That sounds amazing.
Yeah. And then Saturday or Sunday, I try to decide which. It's usually Saturday, and then Sunday I meal prep again. So
what do you
2 to 3 times a week. Oh man, I have so much food. I'm actually getting tired of cooking. I love cooking, but during the pandemic, I've actually hated it because of the dishes. There's just so many dishes. So now I just kind of eat to survive. I'm like kind of reverting back to college days, and I'm like 33, where I'm just craving cereal. So I'd eat a cereal, and I'd make like a grilled cheese, but I make like a lot of like pastas, Asian foods, Mexican food, almost everything.
Honestly, that's what we've been doing too. Like Gio has been cooking a bunch of tacos because it's super simple. So you just get guac, salsa and everything. And I make a lot of pasta these days because I'm trying to hit, for me personally, like our whole apartment, we work out a lot these days. And for me, I'm trying to eat 3,000 calories a day, get all that carbs and protein.
Oh, yeah.
Johnson's also vegetarian, so it's even harder for him.
Yeah, so it's even more difficult for me. Yeah.
I think I inexplicably started intermittent fasting. I don't know. I think it's also because I didn't even intend to. Like, I just don't eat until like 10. And then when I eat dinner, well, I haven't eaten dinner yet, so not tonight, I get hungry at like 5. So it's like early bird dinner, and then I'm like done for the day.
I'm the same. I don't eat till like 11 or 12. So pandemic has definitely changed our diets and habits. And like helped us like understand ourselves too. Wait, can you also comment on, do you feel like you're on the Good Friendship right now? Like, is this like the same format, like where we're talking with friends and all that stuff? And just
I feel like we're just shooting the shit. Like, let's just talk about like
whatever shit comes to mind.
Life, what happens, what's happening in your world, the world at large. And then like, I think the pandemic too has also been interesting in terms of understanding yourself. We don't really see anyone else. I mean, I live alone. You guys at least have roommates. You get to at least live, you're almost like real world style. You guys are probably annoyed of each other by now, but also it's nice to have somebody to just talk to. But we don't have that spontaneous interaction. Like, I miss the office. Like, I miss the person that like I would just see in the kitchen or like in the hallway, because I can't just like shoot them a text and be like, what's up? Like, that's already so intimate, but I could, it'll just take more effort. And I miss the office.
Yeah, I was going to ask, like, how has your experience been like living alone during the pandemic? Because I know, like you said, I live with Gio. We live with 3 other roommates, and me and Gio talked about this multiple occasions. He used to live by himself, and he told me like if he was living alone right now during this time, he thinks he wouldn't have been able to like been okay. Or like, how has your experience been?
Yeah, I think because I'm reaching the 1 year mark, I've unfortunately adapted to that. I'm an extrovert. I'm a social being. I love being with other people. One of my top love languages is physical touch. So I used to just always hug people. So I would say the first 40 days into the pandemic or the quarantine, that was the hardest for me because I was actually counting the days. I was like, oh, wow, it's like day 14 since like I've seen somebody. And then day 31 since I've seen somebody and anyone has ever like touched my like my back. I'm just like, just touch my back.
Paper with like a tally mark or like how do you
no,
kind of
but
like
I just like
head,
mentally, I was like, okay, 31 days. I was like, when are we going to get out of this? They kept saying 2 more months, 2 more months, 2 more weeks. And I actually broke down. I think that was the worst moment was probably like late March or early April, where I was like, this loneliness feels different. And I was like, oh, this cycle is just hard. And I need to adapt. What I did, I mean, I cried. I I had a tent at the time, so I would just cry in my tent. I put it in my living room because it was kind of like my oasis of like comfort that I had to build. And I filled it with, a weighted blanket, just a bunch of different things. Yeah, it was hard. And I think just realizing that I had to ask for what I needed from my friends and that I would have to almost increase my other love languages, like quality time, but through FaceTime. So I made a conscious effort to do that. Remember when everyone was just like always FaceTiming? Still, I mean, to this day, right? We have Zooms and everything.
I mean, right now we're doing this over Zoom, so it's like the new age. It's like the new thing now that
but
we have to do.
I think I also kept like a journal of like the 1 year of like in March, April, and even May, I would FaceTime my friends like 4 to 5 times a week. That was a lot. Now I'm just like texting them and like, hey, let's do a FaceTime every other week or something. But over that, like we was like, let's play a game, let's hang out. Like everything became like an activity, and that was like kind of fun because like we didn't know how long this was gonna last. Mm-hmm. And then words of affirmation, like I needed more of that. So I would just ask my friends like, hey, this is what I actually need from you. Can you give it to me? And I mean, once we were able to go outside, like New York started to get warmer, I would just ask my friends to just put their hand on my back. Because that was like the only fucking touch that I would get. And I was like, yeah, I was like, please just put your fucking hand on my back.
I swear I have a hand sanitizer in my bag or something that you can use after. Like, it's fine.
Yeah, I'm like, here's a glove. Like, wear your mask, wear a glove, or just like literally just, I don't know.
It's like,
touch
just
me
like
with your hand. Just
like,
poke me in the back.
Make me feel human.
Make me feel human.
That's I felt a similar way because when I went in for a COVID test, that was the first time I left the house in a long time. And when they stuck the thing out my nose, I was like, wow, no one's touched me in months, and that's the first time someone touched me. So I think I can relate, right? It's very like, it almost like hits you so hard. You're like, wow, that was like physical human touch, and something you took for we take for granted.
Took all of it for granted. Exactly. Like I love hugs, and like I mean, thank God, like we can just like see each other, like, and wear masks and be in the same vicinity or hang out outside. But yeah, that was hard. But now I think that with the 1 year mark and vaccinations are coming, it'll be a different lifestyle. But I also don't know how I'm gonna. I mean, I was in a Whole Foods, still like social distance from people. I had to pick something up. But even just being in that setting or like just grocery shopping and there's someone near me, like I don't even know how I'm gonna like react to like with 30 people in a room. Ew. And then bowling alleys shouldn't even exist anymore because you just like put your fingers in the bowling ball. And then remember like back then we would just like bowl but then eat and then bowl, eat.
Yeah,
like,
bowl, eat, and we would like drink and like
God.
take shots and we like high five each other. Oh man.
Like that's not, ew, I can't believe we did that.
I was like, because you realize a lot of the things we did pre-March 2020 were so unsanitary. Using like just going out into the world and doing certain things like eating pizza with your hands when you're in like a dollar store. That's sometimes like unsanitary too, right?
I mean, I think hopefully the thing that will stick after this is just like people washing their hands. Basic, but like
they
please.
should.
It's
I
more
hope everybody keeps that.
And you said you were moving. Did you decide to not live alone anymore? Like what happened there?
Oh no, I'm still living alone. So there was a point where I was like, I hate living alone. And then I think there was a moment in time during pandemic when everyone who had a partner or roommates was kind of annoyed over their roommates. And I was like, I love living alone again. I just needed the ability to go out on my own time as a choice, as an option to be like, okay, I can see some family or some friends. And I'll alternate every 2 weeks or something or create some sort of pod system. But then I can just like revert back into like my own safe space and my own, just like living alone was cool in that regard. But having it be, because now I'm freelance, having it be my office, my living room, my exercise, I lightly vary exercise, so a stretch area, a meditation area, I can only walk from like my room to my living room to my kitchen. So I was like, I need to get out of here. So I'm looking for a 2-bedroom apartment, which I'm still going to live in by myself. But the second room area is going to be my office.
If you're looking in Manhattan, let me know because I actually do real estate. So let me know if you need any help. So
I'm looking in Greenpoint. I'm looking in Greenpoint because right now I'm in Astoria. So I was able to find something, hopefully 90%. I just got to see it and sign it. And hopefully that pulls through. But
so you kind of mentioned earlier, like you became a contractor essentially and worked from home and everything. I think Gio told me that you made that decision during the pandemic. What kind of led you to do that or commit and make that jump?
Yeah, so I made the decision to quit Vayner. I was at Vayner for 8 years as a strategist. It was my first and last. I said it was going to be my first and last agency. I decided to quit actually and had the conversation with Gary at my 7-year check-in with him. So I was like, hey, like I really love that I got to the director level. But I also know that I'm ready to leave. I just don't know what I want to do. And he's like, okay, figure it out. I'm like, okay, I'll figure it out. And I didn't know until probably November of 2019. And it was on my trip. I knew I wanted to leave. I was like, I am going to leave soon. I'm going to leave soon. And I was on my trip in South Africa. And I did some work with a coach who helped me figure out my purpose in life, which was I want to help change the world. And it's so broad. I was like, I want to just help change the world. And it was because I watched Wonder Woman. And after that, I had this energy around it. I call it my soul beeper. I just knew that was like my calling to help others. I just didn't know how. And then I figured out like, I want to help change the world by helping other people change their own worlds. And I went into, I was really interested in the mental health space because I've been in therapy. But I also knew that there's more to mental health than just one-on-one therapy because, that's what everyone thinks it is, but it's more than that. So when I was on this trip in South Africa, I was on a ride. I forgot what it's called, but like seeing all the animals and
a safari.
On a safari. I was on a safari. And we were just like waiting in the Jeep. And I was like, I think I want to quit because I want to actually pursue something in the mental health space. And it just felt like right. I can't even explain it. So that's like my other soul beeper calling. And then when I got back to the States, it was like right before holiday vacation. I spoke to my CSO and it was like at 5:30 p.m. the Friday before everyone was going on break. And she's like, oh, what's up? Is everything okay? And I'm like, I know we've had this conversation before, but I'm ready. And she's like, okay, so like, when are you going to quit? I was like, April 2020. And I said this in December. I was like, I'm giving you a 4-month notice. And she's like, wow, that's enough time. But like, we just had that kind of relationship, which was, I am super grateful for because she's the CSO. And then also, Gary too was on board, and also Claude, who is the CHO, which is head of HR and culture. Mm-hmm. So I've had, one-on-one conversations, and I was like, oh, mental health. I put the date for April, and then COVID happened. I was like ready to bounce. April came around. I was supposed to leave April 15th. I think April 2nd or whatever, I was like, I don't know what's going to be happening with this COVID thing. And I don't think I'm ready to necessarily leave yet. Are you okay with, still taking me on? Luckily, they were like, yes, like we still we'll keep you on. Just give us a new date. Maybe September will be better. And time went by, but I think my experience of being at Vayner during the pandemic was actually very helpful in me in terms of, working through anti-racism, mental health, community care, because I was able to, again, understand what I what my calling was when it came to, or purpose was when it came to mental health. Therapy, yeah, everyone should have it for sure. But it's such a 1% product. It's expensive.
Yeah.
The supply isn't there. When you double click into intersectional identities and what people are looking for, as a queer woman of color, I couldn't find other therapists like that. And so there are, financial, and then also it's like identity barriers when it came to that. I, rewrote my purpose, and I was like, I want to help other people change the world by helping people change their own communities. So it's like very micro 101 thinking of, pod mapping, and then also thinking about everything that you have that's in your life, you can change. And those people in it are people that you can help change. And it just becomes like an exponential effect that like a lot of people don't think that they can make a difference, but then you can literally make a difference based on who is in your life right now and like who you talk to, the communities that you are part of. I was like, okay, it's not mental health is one of it, but like I want to focus on community care. I had a conversation with the founder, who I now work for as freelance. She's the CEO and founder of Poppy Seed Health. Not necessarily for a job, just for like career advice. And she's like, when are you leaving, or when are you planning to quit? And I was like, September. And she's like, okay, I want to give you advice. You've been working for like 10 years. Try to take at least 30 days off. And I was like, okay.
Wait, so take 30 days off of like not doing anything, just
not doing anything.
So
yeah,
post-quitting.
But post-quitting.
Wow.
So September 15th. So what I ended up doing, I was like, okay, 30 days doesn't seem like enough. I'll do 45 days. I ended up doing 90 days.
Oh, shit. What'd you do during those 90 days?
It was like a roller coaster of emotions, because the first 30 days, it felt like a detox. Like imagine working, hustling. You work like 50, 60 hours a week. You just know like the schedule and the rhythm. Week 2 felt like, like a vacation, right? You're like, whatever. And then by week 3, you're like, what do I do? I have too much time. I don't know what to do. I don't even know what I like. I was like, who am I? I felt like I had an existential crisis.
You had like a whole internal dialogue, I'm assuming, where you like, because you said you had a journal. So were you just like writing in your journal every day and like figuring out like what you were feeling in those moments and like reflecting on the day before, then reading like 2 weeks back and all that stuff too? I
themed it out because at the time too, I was going through like my first queer relationship with a woman too. And then I was also... It was very transitional, that period, like September through October. Like, I don't even know what happened. Well, I do know what happened, but it's just a specific time in my life where a lot of change happened. And I can't even like point to it. It's like a lot of internal like shedding. And I think at the time it was like shedding the things that no longer served me, but also selecting and choosing the things that do. And I think, like, to your point, like, I think I had an existential crisis because I was like, who am I? What do I do? Who am I without my job, first of all? What do I like to do and what do I enjoy? I was like, oh, I'm a writer, but, like, for some reason I couldn't write. I was like, had writer's block. I started getting into rhythm. I was like, okay, let me just start new routines because I have all this time. So I started playing basketball.
Hey, nice.
Every morning, I was just shooting around on the courts, which was cool. I got back into cooking. I, again, was journaling. But for me, I was basing it off my energy level. So I think for me, it was like, listen to your body. And I think at the time when I was so strict on a 9 to 5 or 9 to 7, I would just like jolt up. So I would create this list of like low lift, medium lift, and high lift. So based on when I would wake up, I'd be like, okay, like what kind of energy do I have right now? Do I feel like doing a puzzle? Do I feel like, scooting around Astoria? Do I want to play basketball?
So would like doing a puzzle be considered like low, and like basketball and scooting around be like a little bit higher?
Yeah, basketball was high. Puzzle was high because it just
like
took
a lot
like
of mental thinking.
Mental thinking, a lot of effort just to like put out the puzzle.
It's true.
Maybe it was a medium high. And then I am not a reader. So, but I think what I was craving and what actually happened was like I lost my curiosity somewhere along the way. And during that time, I found refound this concept called the beginner's mind, which comes from Buddhism, which is like approach everything like you're doing it for the first time. So everything should feel new and everything should feel like you're learning something new. So I feel like I got that wonder and curiosity back, and I learned so much shit during that time that it made it clear once I got back to, December-ish, when I was ready to find a job-ish, what I should do. So I, really wrote a very, very specific job description. I started practicing the law of attraction. So the law of attraction is you believe that everything that is yours is already yours. So it kind of just removes the fear aspect of things of like, I think I'm on the wrong path, which is a common thing that I used to always believe, like, oh, this one thing is going to veer me off to what, like, now I'm like 3 steps behind. Or my reframe was like, well, actually, this is the path that I'm supposed to be on. And how you get there is the way that you're supposed to get there. Yeah, I mean, I saw this on TikTok. So like the affirmation that really helped, it was about partnership, but now I just changed the word. So it's like the partner I am seeking is also seeking me, and I release all obstacles that stand between us. And now I'm like, the apartment I am seeking is also seeking me. And I'm releasing all obstacles that stand between us. The job that I am seeking and all that. And it's been like wildly, I don't know if it's because of that or I'm just like believing it and not being scared of it, of like the unknown. I think I'm such a planner. And for me to quit, even though past Jaimee planned for present Jaimee to not work, once I got in it, I was like, what the fuck, what am I doing? I was like, past Jaimee told you you're going to be okay, that you don't have to work for 3 months. Because the thing about also working from home, for some reason, I saved a shit ton of money. So what I did with that money, I was like, this is my fund to support me while I'm like incomeless. So like, don't worry, you have 3 months, you have 4 months. You don't have to think about like a job right now. But I kept worrying. I kept thinking about like, oh, money. And like, I don't know why, maybe it's like millennial, but also like Asian culture of like, hey, you must save your money. Like, why are you spending money? Hey. And I'm like,
oh my God, I get that so much. My parents hit me with that so much. And so you were talking about how you had like all of these shifts in mindset across that 3 months that you were also like resting, right? You were also like trying to like figure things out. What was actually one of the most interesting things you've learned? Because you mentioned that you learned a lot of shit. What did you learn?
What did I learn? I learned...
Top 3.
Besides like, cooking, like what's like those top 3 things that stood out to you the most?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of them that's kind of bit that I'm that I'm exploring, which, people in my life know, is I am exploring a non-monogamous relationship style. And that was pretty therapeutic for me, I think, of just understanding non-monogamous relationship structures. Like I listened to a lot of podcasts about it. I read books about it. I went to like a coach on it. I went to a workshop about it. I talked to just a bunch of different people. And I think just like realizing that part of myself during that time, it just led me to more abolitionist thinking. And also just like liberated thinking of like anti-capitalist and being anti-capitalist, the decolonization of the mental health space. There were just so many overlaps that it led me to the same idea of community care. I was like, okay, community care and relationship structure. Relationship anarchy was the thing that led me to like believe that like friendships is actually nurturing intimate relationships is a form of therapy, or not, and is a form of mental health.
I do have a quick question. What does it exactly mean, like relationship anarchy?
Really? Yeah. So relationship anarchy, right now, that the way that society has taught us and that we've learned and been conditioned to the monogamous relationship structure, which is usually centered around romantic partnerships. So like the romantic partner should be the one that gives you almost everything in the world. You look at Disney, like Prince Charming, right? And the princess. You look at every type of TV show and movie and book, and it's about two people, something about love, some quest for love, and like the happy ending is this person that you're supposed to be with forever and ever and ever. The relationship anarchy actually breaks that and levels it out. Like, definitely read the Relationship Anarchy Manifesto. It has like some principles in there, but it removes the romantic partnership from the middle, and it becomes almost like equalized, so that whatever relationship you have with the person is just as unique and just as intimate and valuable as you decide you want it to be. So it's not necessarily defined by like, you know, we're just friends, or like we're just like, I don't know, like friends with benefits, or this person is my girlfriend, boyfriend, or partner. It just puts the value back on the people to define it as they want to define it. And it also shows that you can have very important and nurturing friendships too. Yeah, it just opens up different love styles and lifestyles. And that, again, has the thing that I learned that made me want to do that good friendship, because platonic, intimate friendships are like, no one really celebrates their friendships as much as like, you know, when you have a partner in your relationship, you know, you put on the status and everyone's like, yay. But you're like, okay, this is just one relationship type. Like, of course, it's nice to have a partnership that has sexual, physical intimacy, but what about everything else? I love the friends that I've had, and like, they're going to be my quote unquote life partners, like forever. And they know parts of me, and, you know, I think practicing that too with my own friends during that time to just like revisit and then practice communication styles has been so helpful. Like asking feedback from my friends on like, hey, what's my feedback style? Or how do I respond to feedback? And also, is there anything you want to give me feedback on? Mm-hmm. And like, I've never had that with, like, we do feedback reviews right at work, and we always are always caring, like always wanting that. But like, what about the other relationships and all the other things in our life? So I would say relationship anarchy for sure. Different communication, intimate conversations that I could have with friendships, and a lot of reframing of just mental health, like how to show up and be there for friends, and how to actually ask for things. I think one conversation that I had with one of the polyam people was just like, oh, I was like, oh man, I feel needy. And she was like, yeah, you're not needy. You have needs. I was like, oh shit. Yeah, that's right.
Wait, so sorry, what's polyam?
She's like, I know. Polyam is polyamorous. Oh, it's a relationship. Oh my God, I'm going to butcher it. It's a relationship structure that means you can have more than one intimate, romantic, and sexual partner. So you can have an actual relationship. So like there might not be hierarchy, but if you are with a primary partner, you can have a secondary partner or another partner that you're like, if you're married, you can have a boyfriend, girlfriend.
And then you were talking about earlier how relationship anarchy is when you kind of give people certain levels, like a value that's deeper than just like, from what I was getting here, because this is all new to me, right? So I'm just trying to understand.
Yeah. Yeah. So it removes like hierarchical value. So I think a lot of the time, you know, in the dating world specifically, we get kind of trapped on the relationship escalator, which is the escalator of just like milestones in a relationship. Say you're talking to a person, I don't know, it's been 3 weeks, right? You went on 4 dates, you get anxious. Or you're just like, okay, let's go see let's see what this is. 6-month mark. They're like, what the fuck? What are we?
It's like, are we exclusive?
Are we exclusive?
Yeah.
Are we living together? When is the appropriate amount of time to have sex? When is the appropriate amount of time to say I love you? When are we gonna be in a relationship? And then once you define it, you're like, when are we gonna get married? And then once you're in that, you're like, when are we gonna have kids? When you're in it, when are we gonna buy a house? Like it's so like
it's like a Bible.
But not a lot of
different levels.
Yeah. Different levels. You're just like going up that relationship escalator. But there are some relationships that don't necessarily need to abide by a relationship escalator. That if you have a relationship and it's like intimate, romantic, has some sort of platonic feeling too, and the depth is there, but you don't necessarily think that it will escalate, then you're like, cool, we're like really good friends who sometimes like maybe fuck around. Or we're really good friends and we have this romantic vibe, but like sex isn't on the table. And then that is your relationship. You don't need to be like, oh, are we going to be partners? Or like, as long as you communicate where you both are and specific agreements, specific boundaries. Like there's so many principles within polyamorous world, non-monogamy, that in terms of relationship communication that I now apply to everything. The communication style is so transparent, it's direct, it's clear, it creates a safe space for trust. You give space to each other too if you're not able to have the conversation at that time. You can say, which is wild to me, that like maybe this is, hey, I hear you and I want to be able to respond to you versus react, because reaction is just like a thing that we are kind of conditioned to based on our past experiences. If you're like, I want to respond to this, but I need time to think through it. Can we talk about this at another time? Like being able to ask that in the moment, because when either arguments or conflict arises in a situation, a lot of tempers can arise, and like you can say things that you might necessarily not mean. But yeah, if you need to argue, but then you create space and time between the person so that you can sort through it or work through the situation together when you're both, through it. So the relationship communication has been groundbreaking for me in my friendships, and then also like at work, and then also like, in romantic or different types of relationships.
So then how would you apply this to so for example, if you want to communicate how you feel about your friend, how would you do that? There are certain portions that you mentioned that you said like, oh, like I need some like words of affirmation. Do you just say, I need words of affirmation?
Yeah, I say it. Okay. Yeah. There are 3, like I actually did like a, not necessarily a test. I think I just, when I was in a moment of need, or I felt needy, quote unquote, or I felt like I needed attention because it was at the point where I couldn't necessarily self-soothe anymore. And I knew that I needed someone to listen to me without giving me advice. So that's one situation where I'm like, hey, I actually need someone to talk, or I want to talk to you about something, but I actually just want the space to say it and not necessarily hear your opinion about it. Are you available for that? And I was like, yeah. There are some other friends where I'm just like, I need you to send me 30 TikToks because I need funny shit. And can you please just send me a bunch? And they're like, on it. I'm like, I'm feeling kind of down. I need something. Can you send me like a few songs that you're listening to right now? I just want to like hear something new. before I would get like kind of mad when I would be sad and I'm like, why aren't my friends checking in on me? But I do have a few friends that are like, oh, Jaimee hasn't, like, she's in hermit mode. We should just check in on her. And my two friends that I FaceTime with, they were both like 2 days ago. They're like, oh yeah, we realized that like you weren't necessarily like responding as much. Like, are you okay? And I was like, yeah, I saw the text and I just like didn't have the energy to, like, I couldn't figure out what it was. And I think we're all facing a pandemic wall, but like personally, I saw the text and I was like, I don't even know what to say. Like I know exactly what to say, but I can't even like fucking type it out. And I was like, all I wanted to do was type a period. And they're like, okay, if we type a period, that's when you know that you actually are in hermit mode. So just type a period. So yeah, it differs by different friend groups, but I've learned to ask for what I need. And I have difficult conversations, I've realized that like I can't necessarily respond without thinking about it first. So like in the moment, I'm like, okay, like I don't really know what to say. Can you give me like 24 hours or 48 hours? And then like we just go back to shooting the shit. We just change the subject. I'm like, wow, that's cool too. Because I've never had a situation where like when I'm having either an argument or a more like deeper conversation with a friend, to just put that on pause and then just like resume. Like, what are you eating for dinner? You know, it's just like, oh, I'll talk to you in 2 days. And then you like, don't talk. So
then how did you foster that community amongst all your friend groups? Is that something that you always set as a like precedent when you first start meeting people? It's like, hey, this is me. I'm Jaimee. This is what I like to do. And then how do you communicate that?
Yeah,
because I feel like when you meet new people, they don't fully understand who you are first. So you have to kind of ease into it, because sometimes people come up with energy and everyone's like, whoa, shit, I can't deal with you. And they don't want to talk to you. So how do you kind of give that off?
Yeah, I mean, with my already friend groups, we have a good enough relationship that they kind of know my style. And I'm like, I'm a Pisces rising and I'm a Sagittarius moon. So I'm very dreamy and in my feels, but I'm also an Aries sun. So I'm very fucking fiery. So they just know they're like, okay, Jaimee's like in her moment. And like, I just have become quote unquote the friend that like can kind of hold that space for any type of friendship across all my friends. For new friends, I don't know. I think it's because I've made a lot of actual new friends the past year in the pandemic of people I haven't even met in person, you know, through FaceTimes and then through conversations. I've actually attracted the same people who are kind of like me in the way that like we talk and that the communication style is kind of the same, and then we work through it. You know, sometimes I don't even know like, family stuff of some friends, but then or parts of their history. Like we just talk about like philosophical, big ideas, creative jam sessions. It still feels like a very close relationship to me. That like even the two people that, Amela and Amanda, who I started that good friendship with, like I haven't met them in person.
Oh, you haven't?
But
wow.
I haven't.
I didn't know that.
So
wow.
Yeah, I met them.
How did you meet them?
Yeah. So Amela, I met a year ago. I was introduced to her because she works at a program for coaching, and I was trying to decide if I wanted to become a coach or not. We had a phone call, and we were both like, "Oh, you're cool. Oh, you're cool." And then we just followed each other. Perfectly. Like literally hit it off, and then we followed each other on Instagram, and it was wild because I went on sabbatical, my own sabbatical, and I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna go off Instagram because like I need to detox from everything on Instagram." And she slid into my DM. She's like, "Hey, I was actually just thinking about you. Like, I have this friend, Amanda, who I think you would really vibe with." And then we just started talking again. And then we started a group chat. And Amanda is actually one of the formative moments within my sabbatical because our conversation, it was like a FaceTime walk through Astoria. She's in SF. It was like an hour and a half, probably 2 hours. I was like, I want like I'm looking for my curiosity again. And then she's like, okay, then go get it. And I was like, okay. I don't know. I felt like I got it that day. Like for some reason, it was literally that simple. It was like our conversation. She's just like, yeah, you can do that. And I was like, okay, like for some reason, I believe you. And then we went into a group chat, and then we just talked about different relationship styles, friendships, what we're reading when it comes to friends, how we manage our own friendships, surprising our friends, sending audio notes to our friends, sending gifts to our friends, writing handwritten notes, just like gestures of care, just to nurture friendships. And yeah, so we started doing that. And we're like, should we just start something about like friendships? And so we did. It's a little bit on pause right now because we have like our life is happening right now. But we're all just like, hey, if it happens, like once we have the energy to, like, it's not going to be something we ever force. Because at the root of it, it's still about like, obviously our friendship. And then let's figure out like what we actually want to do with it.
Like on one of our previous episodes, like Gio and I talked about friendships a lot and how like me personally, I have like essentially like 5 levels of friendship. How would you define a good friend in your words?
Yeah. Again, I think it goes back to communication because I still think of good friend who I haven't talked to in 3 years, but then we can just like, hit it off again. Or, my texting friends who I text a lot, like almost daily. And we just have that kind of like understanding of where we are, where we fit in each other's lives. And if we need more, then I ask them. Like, it's just very like trustworthy. I haven't necessarily even ever had a friend breakup. Like I've had, people ask advice for that. I'm like, I actually don't know because I've never really had a friend breakup or, lost a friend in that regard because I don't see it as a loss. I see it as like our relationship for what it was what it needed to be. And if we need to communicate that and hopefully there was no harm done, then it's just like, it's not even ghosting. It's just like, hey, like we were in each other's lives. And we were, for that, like maybe 2 weeks, right? Or that 2 months, that 3 months. Like, I'm so glad I got to know you during that time. And I'm so glad you also let me into your world. And I'm here if you need it, if you need me. So yeah, I love making a lot of new friends. I think just, I think communication can solve everything. I think that's my answer for everyone. They're like, what do you think will solve the world? Like communication.
Just say what you feel in the moment.
Better communication.
Exactly.
Say what you feel in the moment. And also just say your truth.
Yeah, from our conversation today, it seems like what I'm getting is that you're very courageous. You take no shits. You're very upfront about things and you know what you want. Like you said, like if you want something more from your friends or, from your job, stuff like that. Were you always like this or did it just kind of, as you grew older, it kind of developed?
Oh, as I grew older. And I think even just more so in the last like 6 months or even year. No, I mean, I'm just going to say this, we come from probably Asian households. You don't really say our feelings that much.
Mm-hmm. No.
At least in mine. I don't know. I mean, the love language of like, at least my household was just like food, right? Like, hey, did you eat? And that's and the way that they say, I love you. And I'm like, I don't think I've ever heard I love you that much when I was even younger or like from my own family, but it just wasn't said that often. Mm-hmm. And I never really thought of it until I got outside of my household. And that's why words of affirmation was kind of like low on my list. Words of affirmation was high on my list when it came to like, you got good grades. You're going to get promoted. You're doing a good job. But it felt very transactional. Like you have to like get good grades in order to like get some sort of reward or recognition.
Yeah. It's like a transaction that you need to do in order to get something, right? It's like words of affirmation only come from a transaction and it's not out of a place of love. Because love language is supposed to come from a place of like for example, I know my top two are like words of affirmation and physical touch too. But the reason I have words of affirmation as my second is because I didn't get a lot of that as a kid. So I know that that's why I want it now, right?
Wait, Gio, so why didn't you get it? Why do you think you didn't get it as a kid?
Because I knew I underperformed compared to my peers, like in a way. So I knew that I didn't deserve, or I didn't register. I didn't register the affirmation properly, in a way. So they probably did it in like an indirect way, like, oh, here's a toy, and I probably didn't notice that that's how they did it. But there are certain ways that you don't notice it until you get older. Like for example, the phrase "I love you." So many people outside of an Asian culture say that. Right?
Yeah. And I'm like,
I'm like, whoa, wait,
that's a lot. That means a lot.
Yeah, wait.
Slow down.
Like, you hear that twice a year and you're like, oh.
What?
You're like, oh shit. And have you played the game Asian Flush by any chance?
Game? No. I just know that I have the Asian glow. But
I also have that.
What is it?
Me too.
It's a game where it's a card game where you draw cards and it's like categories. It's like, for example, one of the categories in the game was, hey, what's one thing your parents never said to you? And we all went in a circle to say, and a lot of my friends are Asian, so they were like, yeah, I'm proud of your home. I'm proud of you. And then another one person said like, you did a good job today. Or like, thanks for cooking. Or thank you. Or like, you're a good son. And then mine was, I love you. And everyone started laughing so hard. And I was like, that couldn't have been more true.
Yeah, it's so true. And then I think it becomes jarring too, as like the Asian Americanness identity clash. Cause like first gen, right? I had to quote unquote assimilate, and especially as I got older, I wasn't as close to my Filipino Chinese culture beyond just like celebrating like the holidays, right? Which holidays for Filipinos are huge, and also for Chinese on my dad's side. I love yous were just an Asian American identity. I did not realize my own Asian American culture and my identity until like I was like 28. And I used to, when I was younger, I used to always say like, oh, I'm a banana. I'm yellow on the outside, white on the inside. And now thinking about that, I'm like, that is so fucked up. I was like, I hate that was the thing that like a lot of my even own Asian friends even said growing up. And that like we would want to just like kind of remove ourselves from our own like Asian culture. I didn't even, remove myself intentionally. But then I was like, oh, when I go to college, like, I'll be like, I was like, essentially became like the token Asian. And because I grew up in LA, everyone was like either Hispanic, Mexican, Asian, Armenian, like every race. Yeah, I didn't realize my Asianness until I moved to the East Coast, of like how it became a stark difference and they saw me as other. And when I was, working and I would get like slight comments like, oh, but you're like the good ones. I'm like, what? I was like, I don't even know what that means.
What? What does that mean?
I don't like, the quiet, obedient fucking Asians are like the Asians of the model minority myth, right? Of just like you play within this in this hierarchy of otherness or marginalized diversity of BIPOC people. That like, oh yeah, you're good. You're really good at math, or like you're really good at studying. You're really good at delivering this. And I was like, yeah. But I was like, yeah, because I'm good at it. But then I started realizing the connotation around it of like,
it was like a microaggression.
It's because, it was a microaggression against like being Asian. And one of my coworkers at the time was like, oh, and I don't know what he meant by it, but it made me mad, but it also triggered something in me to be like, fuck, I want to learn more about my intersectional identities because I can't split it. But he was like, what do you get more discrimination for being a woman or for being Asian? And I was like, what?
Man.
Wait, your coworker asked you that?
That's so shattering.
Yeah.
Because it's like a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, I can't even split that answer because how I have experienced life thus far and forever will be is it as an Asian woman. I was like, I can't split that. Like, for you to even ask me that or to see which part of my identity makes me experience discrimination more. Like, why are you asking dudes? Why are you discriminating against this Asian woman? Or like the system or, you know, whatever allows that to happen. And I was like, fuck that. I knew I was always proud to be an Asian woman, but like in that moment, I was like 10,000% proud to be an Asian woman. I was like, I'm going to tear you apart. Yeah. And like, that still is just like a memory. I was like, wow, I can't believe he fucking said that. And that worked too.
Wait, how did you tear him apart? Because what happened after that?
She chewed him out.
Okay, so again, like I said before, in moments I don't know how to say things, and I think I was at the moment of just being so angry I could have cried. Which also at the time I'm like, don't cry, because that's also going to be a thing that I have to manage because like he's like, oh yeah, so she's a woman and I made her cry, you know? And I was like, okay, I can't really do that. I was like, well, I don't think that's a fair question to ask because I have two of those identities. And I said it like very simply in that moment and then just like removed myself from the situation. Because I was like, if I keep talking, I'm going to like literally start screaming. And I don't want to do that because you're going to probably just think I'm a fucking crazy ass woman. So it's like the amount of, you know, situations that I've had to kind of like push down, and it sucks because I didn't even know the term of like, especially now that I'm understanding my more and owning more of my Asian Americanness. And I don't say that I didn't own it before, but like I realized my own behavior of code switching, of like changing my language, my behavior to fit a certain thing. And, you know, I went to an Ivy League, so I felt like I code switched there a lot to be like, but then it was like in a primarily white community. And I still felt like, and that's when I felt like, quote unquote, othered, because I was like, do they see me different? And then when I also hung out with like, it was just a stark, realization to go from home to East Coast.
I think I can relate to that because when I was in college too, because I'm not even from this country, man. So I had to like fly from the Philippines to the US for college. And I thought I could get along with people. Like, you know how you said you felt like an other, right? Like, did you felt that because you were hanging out in a predominantly like white friend group, right? Yeah. Is that right to say? Okay.
Yeah.
Because I felt the same way.
My friend group was primarily like white, but I think later in college, I was just like, I need to find people who are actually diverse because it was weird. I would just do things and, you know, Filipino culture is loud, right? It's just being like, ha, 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 ha.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, wow, that's weird. Like someone was like, oh, Jaimee, you're being weird. And I was like, fuck that. I'm not being weird. Like, that's just me.
That's just your
and
culture.
I think
that's like who you are.
That's my culture. What? It's like who I am. And I'm like, I'm sorry, you're very
sensitive or
conservative or I don't know, but I'm like, okay, like that's interesting. Growing through that, like I definitely, like, I mean, I go back to the banana thing because I was thinking about that as I've been reading so much more, especially with the Asian hate crimes that are happening now. And, you know, I've been very vocal about anti-racism in the Black community. And then once this news hit, I actually felt like I didn't even know what to say because I felt like I was processing a lot of stuff on my own that I didn't realize that I had to process. I was like, yeah, of course, like stop Asian hate crime. But we're so used to just like being like, oh, it's okay. It'll go away. Like, I don't know. Like, I was like, I don't know. It felt strange to me because I my reaction wasn't as strong to be like, to voice it as much. And I actually went into a very silent mode. And that was new for me. And I wanted to process that on my own, to be like, oh, like, you know, my own code switching behaviors. And then it came like flooding back, like all the things that I brushed away before, when people would always say ni hao to me on the street, or like throw up peace signs at me in a working environment, when people would do slant eye. And I just remember all those moments that, you know, the microaggressions, and I was like, and I didn't say anything at the time, you know, because out of fear, or out of just like, oh, whatever, it's just a quote unquote joke.
I was gonna say, like, I think it happens to all of us. Like, I think for us, we just kind of thought it was normal, I guess, or just like, you just kind of brush it off. You're like, oh, like, we've seen that a million times already. They don't really mean it or something, you know, like cheese, or like, you just kind of brush it off. And I think I realized that too. Like, looking back, I've had so many of those situations where people would do that, and you just kind of laugh it off. But like, looking back, we should have like kind of said something, or at least just like voice our like, hey, man, that's like not cool, you know?
And no one does that. So, like, we didn't do that when we were younger because we didn't know that we should have spoken up in that moment. And a lot of like our parents and our grandparents are like very much conservative when it comes to fighting back on things, right? I mean, my dad is not.
It's brushing it off.
He will fight back. There's a story behind that. Like, my father and my mother and I were on our way to a cruise ship. And a lot of people that work on cruise ships are Filipino. So we look like those people. So we were walking to the passenger section.
Oh, you told me this story before.
This is like, I still remember this so clearly to this day, is that we were walking to the passenger section, and the crew man came up to my father and was like, excuse me, sir, like, this is the lane for passengers. Like, crew goes this way. And he blew up. He was like, yo, shut up. I'm a fucking passenger. And he like blew up. And I was like, huh. And I still never forget that to this day, when it's like, yeah, you should probably speak up when something like that does happen. And it's like, the moment is now for us to actually speak up about those things. You have to process it, because like the 25, almost 26 years for me now that I didn't speak up is now coming out, and it's affecting our community, especially now, because everyone's stuck inside. We can't do shit. And all these like people are getting hurt, and the media stage media won't cover it. Yeah, they won't cover it. Like, just the Navy vet that just happened, and he was Filipino. I just saw like an old lady who works for a pizza store and got robbed, and then she went after them, and 4 of the guys just beat her up, and I was just like, exactly.
That's not.
And they're like four, like, there's so many things that have happened recently, and a lot of these people were like just minding their own business, and it just happened. And that's what was tough for me to process, was because we're just trying to, like, known as the model minority, where we sit back and we're like, yo, we're just here.
Yeah, we don't say anything.
Yeah, we're just here. We're just here, man.
And then it's so sad too, because like elders in Asian culture are like, you give them the utmost respect, you know? Like, it's such a, like, how dare people attack these elders? And it just feels like a cultural blow. Like, it's both on a personal level, but also on a like, as an Asian community, it feels very jarring that, like, how dare you even do that to, you know, our grandmas, our grandpas, our grandparents. And because now we're at the age where, like, you know, our parents could be that age when they're just like walking around, you know, and I'm like, that's so fucked up. And I think it's the thing that we have to remember, and I've been, you know, listening to a lot more people in the space, because like, okay, I'll actually need to learn more before I actually can process, and maybe learning more will help me process. But as, you know, millennials and like either first gen or second gen, or, you know, whatever generation we are, like, because we have more tools at our disposal right now when it comes to mental health, communication, different frameworks, even like the power of social media, right? Like, we are the generation that can actually break the pattern. Like if you think about it, our families are so used to not talking or standing up for themselves, or just like trying to protect the family unit, right? But now we are part of the generation to like break that or like to make it better. And I think that is such an interesting notion because there are so many of us. And if we work again in solidarity, learn anti-racism work, understand like how we can actually help our community, then like we can then pass it on to the next generation so that like if they ever see something, they know what to say or they know how to stand up for themselves. And you know, maybe our grandparents or like even like 3 generations above us, they probably did it, but like we were so you know, coming to America is like assimilate to the culture. You want to make sure that like you know, move up the ranks. So just hush, hush, be quiet, do your job. Mm-hmm. But now, you know, they came from countries where, you know, they were fighting for that right. So now that they came here, it's like, oh, make sure that you like do a good job and you don't raise any flags, right? I mean, I'm very generalizing here, but that's like the most of it. Yeah. But now that we are here, we're like, we are Asian American. Like we have 2 identities and 2 cultures that we want to like make our own. And we are going to not stand for like any type of racism. Like how do you make the next anti-racist generation in, you know, America? So I think that's we are in an interesting point in time. It's unfortunate that there are so many hate crimes right now. Yeah, there's a lot of action to be done and to change that, because it's how do we become support or fight anti-Asian crime without having to point to, without being anti-Black. Because if you look at like the people who did some of the crime, it's Black people. But like we don't want to be like, go get them cops. That just perpetuates the whole system again of model minority. It's not Black people that we need to be pointing our fingers at. It's the whole system of oppression of white supremacy. Mm-hmm. The fact that like the communities are not funded properly, they don't have their basic necessities. That is why a lot of people have to quote unquote steal from everybody else in their community, is because they don't have housing. They don't have rent. We're in a pandemic. No one's getting any stimulus to help. So it's like beyond that. So it's like, how do you also know that there's dualities to both, right? That like from a very like hate crime by itself is very bad, but also you should know the larger picture of like, we're in a capitalist system and literally the lower class is just like, or the lower middle class is just fighting amongst each other.
It's like we're getting duked out. No help. So we can't even.
We're getting duked out.
It's a whole systemic thing, which is why it's so hard to solve the issue.
Huge.
Yeah.
Yeah. So everybody wants to just point to one thing. That's the easiest. I mean, that's the easiest thing to like rally behind, right? We can point to that. But there are so many things to point at and it can get convoluted. But like truly, it is like if you want to point at something, it's like white supremacy.
No, I was just say I think like right now is the time with, you know, we have so much resources that we can utilize, and it's like the time where we should come together as one and unite together, you know, support one another, educate one another, and not to bring each other down, especially minorities. If we come together as one, if we're able to show that we're strong together, we're able to, you know, be able to help other people understand what we're going through. And from there, we can have a bigger voice, you know, because if we're just one Taiwanese, Filipino, whatever, you know, if we all come together as one, I think more people will be able to kind of listen to us or take us seriously. It's kind of like my thoughts. Yeah.
Like and I think that this is, the whole BIPOC community. I think we're seeing this too. I mean, I haven't necessarily even been able to have this conversation with my own friend groups yet, because I'm just like, okay, I for some reason it's taking me longer to process it and to understand it and my own voice and figure it out. So I think there's like an awakening happening through almost every generation of like Asian generation as more people talk about it and they have this conversation. So I think the first step was obviously awareness to it, right? But then educating people so they understand, what are the resources. And I saw this quote. I wish I could figure out who to attribute to it right now, but it's like, whenever you learn something new, don't be mad that you didn't know it before, and then find the people who do know about it and then amplify that. I can't be mad at myself to be like, why didn't I learn about Asian American history when I was younger? I'm like, I don't know why. I didn't. So let me learn about it right now. Who are the people that are leading that, who have done it? And let me amplify the fuck out of it. Because again, back to my own community care and what the impact can be. If I don't know about it, somebody else might not know about it. So sharing the resources and talking about it, and then figuring out courses of action, whether that's, donating, volunteering, protesting, all of that. Mm-hmm. It's all doable.
And there's some people that are like, oh, sharing a post on social media isn't helping, right? I've seen these posts where they're like, oh, if you share stuff on social media, you're not really helping, you're not doing anything. And I'm like, but do you think that's true? Because I don't think that's true, because I feel like you're still educating yourself, right? So that's still helping in a way, right?
I think I think you can share, but there are other people who just do it for performative reasons and they don't really have the intent and they kind of want to look like they're doing stuff. When it comes to anti-racism work, there's the education part where a lot of people start, right? They're like, I am reading this, I'm immersing myself, I'm following all these people. But when it comes to actually practicing it or doing anything that has impact, then, if you look at kind of almost like a resource guide of how you can actually make an impact. There are people who are readers, right? I was like, okay, you read all the books, but maybe you hold a quote unquote book club, but then you hold discussions around it. And then you have some sort of agenda around it to be like, what did I learn from this book? Because there are people who aren't readers like me who need that information. So what can you do with that? That's your superpower. Now go do whatever your superpower is for reading, and what can you do with that to educate somebody else? There might be somebody else who, is great at drawing or great at creating graphics. I'm like, okay, your superpower is that. That's your skill set. Can you make very complex information look good so it's shareable on Instagram so that more people can see it? And that more people can do it, because reading something is fucking hard. And there's people who are like, I'm going to protest the fuck out of this. I don't like to read. And I'm like, cool, we need more bodies out there. We need powers in number. Go protest. There are just certain things that people are good at, but I do not like people who are like, I know this. And then they go to brunch. And they don't it's not something that they practice. There is a type of person that is performative.
Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah, it's they're trying to play into the mold of a trend, and it doesn't help the situation. And that doesn't help anyone. And there are definitely people around there that think they're helping, but they don't realize it, that need to know that they can help in certain ways. As you said, play to your strengths, right? If you can draw. If you can speak. If you can protest, go protest. And I think that's really evident in a lot of people that have come out. They have the Asian, what was it called? Asians with Attitude. I follow that page. That page is dope. They basically were the ones that helped, I think, escort the elderly in Oakland. That was they helped escort them to escorts when all the attacks started to spring up. Yeah. So they do patrols and stuff, and that's just volunteering. That's also a form of volunteering. Yeah.
Form of volunteering, call banks, phone banks, text banks, anything to play to your strengths. And I think also too, because we're probably starting at very different levels, something that I've learned is that there is no perfect way to do it, and you will fuck up. People sometimes are hesitant to even start being oh, I want to speak up on this, but I might say something wrong. It's you might say something wrong. And if someone calls you out on it, invite that feedback. Nothing I'm wrong on you. You say, oh, thank you for your feedback. I didn't know that. And then say like, I am accountable for what I just said. I recognize your feedback and this is what I'm going to do about it. Like, it's just very like, be open, because there are people that know better than you, for sure. And then that you will probably know a little bit more than somebody else. How can you coach them and invite them in? And then, oh man, we can go all into cancel culture, but like transformative justice, right? Where like, how do you actually give the opportunity for someone to learn and grow from something? And, you know, we all come from very, very different life experiences. I can only speak to my experience as a Filipino Chinese 33-year-old queer woman. I cannot speak to anything else with certainty. So open yourself up to feedback. And if you get it, learn and then like be accountable for it. So I think that's a very big part of anti-racism work. And communication, as always.
as the running theme is. And you mentioned that I know that you have a blog on Medium, right? And you have like all these stories. Yeah. If you were to pick one of those stories on Medium that you'd like to share, what would it be? Because there's so many on there that I read that I'm just like, holy shit, these are all great. But I want to pick your brain and see what you like the most.
Maybe because it's more recent, but probably my first essay about coming out. Mm-hmm. And I don't even, and now I would actually change that title because I don't believe in coming out, because the status quo and norm of everybody being cis het or cis heterosexual. Yeah, it's more about like, and I even said it as a line in my essay, was like, in order for me to come out, I had to come in. And it was like a inner journey versus an outer journey. So I think the first essay in that anthology, for sure, is one that I would probably say, like, I hope everyone could read. And then the other one would be probably the one about betrayal, like the first part, because that at the time was very, I mean, it's a heavy topic, but not so much like for me now. But I think the idea that when it comes to breakups, you know, and the trauma that comes with betrayal and the things that you'll need to learn through that was very big for me. So again, big moment of like 26 to 28 for me in that regard. Yeah, I think those two have been my big ones. And I have taken a break from writing because I feel like everything's too fresh right now. And I feel like I used to not ever be like, oh, I'm just going to write it. Like, even if I'm in it. But I don't think I'm ready for that yet. And I usually like to give space to things now as I get older. Yeah. But yeah, I have a shit ton of essays that are just lined up. I mean, I got to talk about relationship anarchy.
Ooh, that's a good one. You have a really, the way you write is so eloquent, and it's almost like you're next to me speaking in my ear, and I'm like, oh God, I hear her emotions through the page right now. Like, I was reading the one about how you accidentally sent the text to your coworker.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, this is like a telenovela drama right now. And the way you were describing things was so succinct, and I just could hear everything that was going on. So then how did you grow your writing? Like, how did you learn to write that way? Is that just how you speak?
I think that's how I speak in my brain.
Oh.
I always journaled. So I think because, I don't know if this is actually a good way of living, but I think of myself in 3 different ways sometimes. And it helps with like also self-reflection. When I'm the narrator, I can kind of direct, you know, the scene. And like, I think of sometimes when I'm living life, like, oh, this would make a good story, which is like, hopefully like it just happens and I'm not like fucking subconsciously just like narrating my life. And then sometimes I'm the author. So when I think of myself as the author, I just think of myself like I can literally make anything happen right now. I'm like, I can literally write the next chapter and write the next scene. And it's a very liberating to be in that mindset sometimes. And then there's sometimes when I'm like the editor, which I'm like, oh, I don't really like when I'm the editor, because it's like I'm actually just choosing the things that I want to talk about. I'm like, no, everything about my life should be, free, and I shouldn't edit anything out. I think that's the way my brain works. I can't explain it beyond that. Beyond just thinking of myself as like a TV show.
The life of Jaimee.
The life of Jaimee.
Do you have any, we should wrap this up. It's been like an hour and a half. Yeah. Do you have any last words that you want to go over or want to say to the audience that's listening right now?
Well, thank you for listening and thank you for having me. I am Gio's cousin.
Shout out.
Shout out. I'm his elder. Respect your elder. I think it's been amazing. I think when it comes to growth and the journey of who you think you're going to be, I think just be kind to yourself. Give yourself grace to where you are now in life. Think of everything, with the wandering, curious minds, and don't feel so trapped by anything that you think you need to be, because that might change in a year, and that's okay. The thing about again, relationship etiquette taught me is that you are allowed to change your mind tomorrow, and the day after that. And the day after that, just give yourself the leeway and the permission to explore, because there is no such thing as being a grown up, just growing up, and not even growing up, but growing through life. And I that's my whole thing. You'll never grow up, you'll just grow through. And that's been my mindset. It feels pretty good.
Thank you, Jaimee, for your candor, experience, and telling us all about your life. And we hope we can see you soon and hopefully catch over drinks.
Yeah, I'll get vaccinated and then we'll take shots in your apartment or something.
Hey, yo.
Actually, not shots.
It is Gio's birthday. It is Gio's birthday soon, though, so you do have to take a couple.
No, please stop. I haven't drank in 3 months, man. But with that,
I'll drink one beer and I'll get buzzed.
But with that, thank you so much to my cousin Jaimee for coming on.
Of course.
And
Thank you,
peace out, everyone listening.
Thank you, Justin.